Hey, welcome back. Oh, part of me wonders if I should put a warning before this one, because, in my opinion at least, it's like the most brutal story so far. So, I'm not really sure how I should preface this. This story isn't very FNAF related, okay? There's like no mention of Freddy's here. There is, without going into too many spoilers before our big summary, there is a robot for an antagonist, but it's not like a Freddy's robot, it's one that one of the main characters makes. So, I don't see how this is connected to, like, what we think of as FNAF. And I'm also kind of wondering why there isn't any connection. As you can tell, I still have some thinking to go through with this story. I'm hoping this video can kind of help me, like, kind of place my thoughts about this story, because it's a really weird one. Okay, but welcome back to Fazbear Frights. Today we're going to be talking about the second story in the cliff. The cliffs. There are multiple cliffs. The breaking wheel. But first...
Only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you want to see more, consider subscribing.
It's free and you can always unsubscribe later. So this story follows a kid named Reed, right? Now Reed is in a robotics class, and they're doing this project where they're just supposed to make something. It doesn't seem like there's very many restrictions for this project. They just make a robot, it seems. It's not very specific. There's a couple different projects going on. There's like a robotic dog thing, which I don't think is Fetch. Fetch was made by Fazbear Entertainment, but it is a weird detail, you know? There is a little miniature robot that you can control, kind of like an RC car. You just get a remote and you control the robot. That's cool. And then there's the kid named Julius's robot. Julius is kind of the big villain for this story. The human villain, that is. And he's the one who bullies Reed. See, again, Reed, our main character, isn't really sure what to do just yet. He says that he feels like all the other kids in this class are smarter than him, and he's kind of lost. But Julius is the kid who bullies him, and just basically everyone else. And what Julius is doing is he's making an exoskeleton, you know, like an endoskeleton, only it's on the outside, so it's an exoskeleton. And this is something that any human can just walk into and wear this robot suit. And it sounds like science fiction, right? Like, this is not something a high schooler makes. But apparently it is in this universe. I guess anyone can just make a robot in this universe, whatever, it's cool. Now, Reed has two friends that are mentioned in this story. There's Shelly and there's Pickle. Yes, his name is Pickle. Actually, I believe his full name was, like, Dillian or something. Dill, like, you know, Dill Pickle, and so they call him Pickle. I don't know. You get used to his name, though, don't worry. And Julius literally goes and trips Pickle and breaks his nose, and this is just... you're kind of starting to realize already how awful Julius is, which makes it a bit hard to feel bad for him when, you know, the later parts of the story come. Just saying. And Reed, even though he usually wouldn't do this, decides to confront Julius about this. He goes up to Julius and he decides he's going to put him in his place. And yet when he does, Julius just starts making fun of him already, and he's really awful. He says terrible things. He's awful. And he starts to get into his exoskeleton to test it. And he talks about how he's going to put Reed in the exoskeleton and make him his slave. So, you know, this guy... it's just great. Now keep in mind, the school on this very day is having a sort of, I don't know, what we call it in our school, it's a noon dismissal. Everyone leaves in the morning, at the end of the morning, and the teachers have like a meeting after lunch. That's what's happening here. And so the school is basically going to be just closed to everyone for quite a while. No one is going to be going in here, no one's going to be around, which makes this much more interesting. So Reed is there, and he's just shocked into silence by how purely awful Julius is, and Julius is getting into his suit when it seems to malfunction, and he gets stuck in the suit, and he can't seem to get out. Reed has the bright idea of not helping him, which I don't blame him, but instead trapping Julius in here for a whole day. So he decides to just leave Julius in here. Great. But again, like, Julius is pretty awful. I mean, he starts, like, this whole racket of an argument over, like, one little small detail, like, him and Pickle are using, I don't understand how it works, but they're using like the same frequency for their robots. So Pickle's controller can control Julius's exoskeleton and vice versa. And so the teacher just tells Julius to shut up and change the frequency his robot is on, which is the same thing to do. But he goes and he makes this huge argument about it and how he doesn't want Pickle controlling his robot with his little robot thing. It's every moment that Julius speaks is just awful. Now this is where a lot of the filler of this story starts to come in, but I do think it's worth it in the end. So the kids all go on this bus, right? Reed, Shelley, and Pickle. And Shelley is like, she's kind of a nerd. She likes to read these history books, and she's reading about a device called the breaking wheel, which was used as a torture device long ago, where it would just break the bones in people's bodies and turn them into, like, how do they describe it in the book? Like an octopus of, like, wriggling, like, they don't have any bones, so they're just kind of like jelly. Really gross stuff. And Reed is now, he's thinking about what he did to Julius, because Julius is stuck in this thing where he can't move, and he thinks, wait, am I torturing Julius? And I mean, yeah, he kinda is. And now the guilt starts to set in, right? Now he's starting to think, okay, maybe that was a bad idea. And I agree, it probably was. I don't think that Julius didn't deserve it, but it was still a bad thing to do. And Reed decides, okay, I will leave him in there for now, because the school is probably locked up by now anyway. But tomorrow, I'll go and I'll get him and I'll take him out of there and run away before he can murder me. Now, there's a bunch more filler in this story where it's just this over and over again. It's Reed kind of sitting, because he goes to these siblings' house, Shelley and Pickle's house. He goes there and he's kind of hanging out with them. He's thinking, hey, this was a really bad idea. Now, Shelley and Pickle's brother, Ori, is playing with the robot that Pickle made. It's like this little miniature thing, and he's just playing with it with the remote. But then something disturbing happens. Reed realizes, hey, wait a second. Pickle's robot and Julian's exoskeleton use the same frequency, and Julius hasn't changed it yet. Which means Ori could be controlling the robot right now, and could also be controlling the exoskeleton, and Julius might be in an incredible amount of pain. Pickle assures him, because Reed doesn't tell Pickle his suspicions. Pickle doesn't even know that Reed put Julius in the suit, but Reed kind of asks Pickle, hey, how far does that remote reach? And Pickle's like, oh, maybe a few houses or so. And Reed thinks, okay, that's not far enough to reach the school, right? Julius is still trapped, but he's not, like, being, flailed around the room by Ori's remote, right? But he can't shake the thought that Ori might be controlling Julius's exoskeleton right now. And the thing is, Ori is making the robot do all kinds of things, like making its arms move in unnatural directions that for a human would probably break their limbs, making the legs go all wrong, like... And he thinks, okay, what if Julius is like being slammed into walls right now? What if his arms and legs are breaking? Because Ori is, without knowing it, controlling his exoskeleton and putting Julius in just incredible pain. And this is the interesting part, right? See, Shelley is making this model for another one of her classes, where it's a 2-scale model of her house, right? It's her house, and it's like perfectly replicated, and it's like, I don't know, it doesn't say how tall it is, but it's basically like a dollhouse size, it's big enough for the robot to get in. And Ori decides, hey, he's gonna bring the robot, he's gonna put the robot inside the house, and he's gonna start playing around with it inside the house. So he accidentally crashes the robot into the wall of this model house, and right as that happens, Reed hears a crashing outside. Now, a few more interesting things like this happen as Ori is playing with the robot inside the house, having a good time, and more crashes can be heard around their house, the real house, the, bigger version of this small house. Now, Pickle and Shelley literally don't care. They think it's probably just the wind. Yeah, classic excuse. And they decide, hey, they're gonna get some soda. Now, Reed is like family to him, and he says he doesn't want to go because he is terrified that could be Julius out there. And he tells them, okay, you guys can go and get some soda. I'm gonna stay here. And so they do. And he does. And as soon as they leave, basically, Reed decides, okay, I need to find out if that's really something out there. He goes upstairs, he looks out all the windows, and he's looking around to see if, like, Julius and his exoskeleton are out there. If Julius's face is, like, battered and bruised and broken, and his arms are all broken, and now I see why they changed the name of this book. This book was actually originally named The Breaking Wheel, like this story. Now it's The Cliffs. That might just be because of how purely awful this story is. Maybe they decided to change the name to The Less Awful Story. I don't know, that's just my theory. So Reed does some searching around. He decides he needs to confiscate the controller Ori used, but he can't find it. So he decides, okay, I'll get the robot he used, so he can't control it anymore. And he finds the robot inside this little model house, and he realizes, hey, inside this model house, there's actually another model house inside that house. It's like Houseception, and it's kind of cool. Shelley actually put a lot of detail into this house. It's a perfect replica of the real thing with another perfect replica inside this model, if that makes sense. And he's like, hey, that's pretty cool. And behind this miniature house, inside the miniature house, he finds the robot, and he finds it behind this house. I'm going to repeat that. The robot is hiding behind the miniature house. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Yeah, and as soon as he finds this robot, Julius and his robot, his exoskeleton, jump out from behind the larger model house and attack Reed. And now we actually get a look to see that all of Reed's fears were perfectly right. He was right to be afraid because Julius is really, really messed up. And he is very, very dead. Very. At first Reed wonders if he's alive, but no, his face is pulverized, his arms and legs are broken. It looks like he's been smashed into a wall 100 times when Ori was using the remote. He's dead. He's dead. And yet, the suit is still moving. How is that? We will see. Now this is the fun part. Julius rips out Reed's heart and throat, attaches Reed to him and to the endoskeleton, and then Ori and Pickle and Shelley come home, and Ori asks if he can use the remote again and the robot. Pickle says, yeah, sure, whatever. Ori grabs the remote, he starts controlling the endoskeleton again, the endoskeleton goes flying out the porch, and then we flash to Ori's perspective. This whole story was from Reed's perspective, obviously now we're looking at Ori's perspective, and now Ori is playing with his little robot in the miniature house, and he's having a good time, he's playing around with the robot. He's making its arms go, flying back farther than any human's arms should go. He's making the legs go, all the way around the back of the body. He's twisting the necks around, fun stuff. All while Reed is outside doing the exact same thing as he's attached to Julius, attached to the exoskeleton. And that's how the story ends. As you've probably noticed, this is a really weird story. It's not normal. Not only does it have no mention of FNAF, the robot in the story is made by just some teenager, as I mentioned before. But it's a really interesting concept, and it's much more gory than most other stories we've seen so far as well. It's weird. I don't know what to say about this story. I feel like there might be some lore hints here. I'm not sure what. There's the typical idea of a robot taking over a human, and then there's the question of Julius died, and I saw a lot of people confused about this on Reddit, right? Julius died, Reed makes sure that he notices that. And yet the robot is still moving as if he's alive and controlling it, so how does that work? And what I think is going on here, and what most people have kind of figured out, is that Julius is probably possessing the exoskeleton. He probably died and is now in control of it and looking for his revenge, and that seems to be what's going on here. It was a good story. This is probably my top 5 favorite stories in the series. It's a controversial one, I know that, but I really liked it. I don't know why, I really enjoyed this story. It's really awful and fun. I don't know what to tell you. It's a good story. I feel like I shouldn't have that opinion, but that's... I don't know. I know it's a controversial story. I don't like the next one, though, by the way. He Told Me Everything. I've already finished it. Not my favorite. Not my favorite. I'll get to that. And I know there's a lot of people who loved that one. So, the comment sections of these videos might be very, very fun. This is why I drink. Actually, that was empty. I need to get some new water. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Let me know if there are any, like, obvious lore hints here that I'm just completely missing. Because I probably am. And just let me know what you thought about the story in general. Did you like how gruesome it was? I did. And I also didn't. It's kind of a mixed bag with my opinions on the story. And yet, it's probably one of my favorites. It's just good in an awful way. You know, it's terribly gruesome, and that's what I like about it. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you for the third story, He Told Me Everything, as well as the Stitch Wraith teaser, which is crazy. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.